Okay, so with our robot finished off here, we can zoom out a little bit. We're done with this orange rectangle in the background here. Again, I hope that made sense as to why we did that. We just wanted to have an object behind our robot so that we could actually see the holes being knocked in the stars here. So you can unlock your orange rectangle. Just hold down Control-Alt-2 on the PC or Command-Option-2. That unlocks. You can see it highlight there. And you can press Delete. We're finished with that guy. So hopefully you're getting used to working with compound paths here. You saw how to work with compound paths inside an illustration like we have here, but I want to show you something a little bit more complicated here. We have two robot heads here over towards the left-hand side here. The robot head towards the bottom, I only put this guy here just as a reference. You can see that there's no inside shapes. He's fine the way he is. But the robot head at the top, you can see that he has these holes inside his little aerials here. So this is going to be a little bit more complex, and you'll see how this turns out in a moment here. First of all, you might want to sort of center this guy on your page and zoom in just a little bit, maybe something like this. Again, I totally recommend doing this orange rectangle idea here. Again, the actual color of the rectangle doesn't really matter, but place an object behind your robot head here. To move to the back, Control-Shift, open square bracket, or Command-Shift, open square bracket on the Mac there, and then Control-2 or Command-2 to lock that object down. Very lovely. And you can see these holes in his aerials are not actually holes, they're actually just white objects. And I will show you exactly what's going on here. We actually have some stacking going on here. So here's the first object. Move them out of the way. There's the black object. Now the reason why this is going to get more complex than our previous example with the stars is because I have another white object and then another black object underneath that. So we have a whole stack of objects here. Now I'm just going to use Control-Z or Command-Z to back up. Now this guy here, obviously we want him to be the cookie cutter. So we're going to need a few cookie cutters here because we have several layers of dough, if you want to think of it like that. So I'm going to take this first guy here and I'm going to copy him, Control-C or Command-C on the Mac. Then what I'll do is hold down Shift and click on the first layer of dough here. And you could use your keyboard shortcut if you remember what it is, but just so that you remember, I'm going to go the long way here. Object all the way down to compound path and then make. There's the first hole. Now, how do you know that that's a hole there? We will prove it to ourselves here by selecting the second layer of dough here, this white object here, and just fill it with a color, any color, doesn't really matter which color there. And sure enough, you can see that there's a hole inside this object here. So that's the first layer of dough. Now the next thing I'm going to do is paste my cookie cutter again, but rather than doing a straight paste, just Control-V or Command-V, which pastes my cookie cutter in the center of the screen. That's no good, because then I have to reposition the cookie cutter. So instead of doing a straight paste, I'm going to use an Illustrator command called Paste in Front. The keyboard shortcut for that is Control-F or Command-F on the Mac, or you can go up to your Edit menu, and that pastes the object in the exact same position from where it was copied from. So that's a command that I use all the time. So keep that one in mind there. Now the next thing I'm going to do, because stacking order is a major issue here, is I'm going to take my first layer of dough here and I'm going to move it all the way to the front, because when I paste it in front, that obviously dropped this cookie cutter on top of everything else. So I'm going to grab this layer of dough here and bring it all the way to the front just by holding down Control-Shift and close square bracket on my keyboard, or Command-Shift close square bracket on the Mac. My cookie cutter is still there. I'm going to highlight it, hold down Shift and click on my second layer of dough here, and I'll use my keyboard shortcut to create my compound path, Control-8 or Command-8 on the Mac. Now again, things are looking a little bit funky here, but I'm going to single click back on my cookie cutter. There he is, there he's now filled with black. I'm going to hold down Shift and click on the edge of my shape here, and Control or Command-8 to knock the final hole through the final layer of dough. And there I can see my orange at last poking through the hole. That's what I wanted there. So I'm going to take my green layer here and fill him back with white so that he's back to the way that he started. So this idea here gets quite a bit more complicated here. We have one more aerial that we're going to try this on here. So there's my cookie cutter. I'm going to select him, copy him, Control-C or Command-C, hold down Shift, grab the second layer here, create my compound path with my keyboard shortcut. Let's prove it to ourselves again by filling this guy with a color. Sure enough, it worked. Remember the keyboard shortcut for pasting in front? Control F or Command F. And don't forget, we have to take this first layer of dough here and bring it all the way to the front. Control Shift close square bracket or Command Shift close square bracket on the Mac there. Grab the cookie cutter, grab my dough here, create my compound path, Control 8 or Command 8. And then finally take this last cookie cutter here and the outside edge of my object here, Control or Command 8. There's the final hole knocked through the aerial on our robot here. And the last thing that I need to do here is take my shape here, restore it back to a white fill, and zoom out and look with pride on my completed robot head here. Now you can unlock your orange rectangle in the background. Control Alt 2 or Command Option 2 on the Mac and delete it. And there he is. Perfect. So there's sort of a crash course on working with compound paths. We started with some simple shapes to illustrate the concept of compound paths, and then we knocked some holes in some stars, and then finally we finished off with the holes in this fella's aerials here. So this guy was a little bit more complex, but hopefully the concept of compound paths makes sense here in Illustrator CS3. By all means, take your time and experiment with them and see what you can come up with on your own. So that's about it for working with compound paths. So go ahead and zoom all the way out just by hitting Control 0 on the PC or Command 0 on the Mac.